1.
To Guinevere, daughter of Orgifan, Augusta, Empress of Britain. The letter began, From Menu, son of Kynan, lord of the noble clans of the son of Maxentius. Many greetings. Well, cousin, by now you have heard that your father is dead, and you know that I am his successor to the lordship of our clan. You must not expect that I will, as he did, humour you, and let our own fortunes take whatever course they will. I mean to better them, as you, for all your protestations of love and virtue, never have. When last we spoke, you told me that I spoke like a beggar, and commanded me not to mention this subject to you again. But I am chieftain now, and lord of your own flesh and blood, and though you have married above us, now I can demand this of you, and need no longer beg. Those lands I spoke of would be the easiest thing in the world for ye to win for us. Your husband, the emperor, dotes on you, or so they say, and you have only to get him to mention the matter to our king for Gillian to give us all that we ask, were it lives instead of lands. If you refuse us this service, do not trouble to write again. I will know that you have chosen to be no part of your clan, and if I have any power here, I will see to it that you are treated accordingly. You are no better than us, however high you may have risen in the world, and you have no right to keep to yourself riches and honours which ought to be shared with your family. Except that you are one of us, do what I ask, and I will forget the past. But if you prefer the imperial purple to your own blood, you must suffer for it.
I set the letter down on the table and stared at it, then pressed the palms of my hands against my eyes, as if that would ease the dull burning there. If I could sit still, if I could not think or feel, even for a little while, perhaps the rage and grief would not crush against my heart so closely. I remembered the time I had told my cousin Menu that he spoke like a beggar. 3 years before, I had accompanied my husband on a visit to the Northern Kings, and had stopped at my clan's holding, meaning to stay for a week or so. It was the first time I had been home since I married Arthur, and went south to hold his fortress for him. My father had ridden out miles to meet me, and treated me like the blessed Mother of God the whole time I was there. He had always enjoyed spoiling me. I was his only child, and my mother had died giving birth to me, so he had no one else to spoil. Menu was right when he said that, and yet it was not to the point. He should be able to see that. When I had been home 2 days, Menu had offered to escort me to the house of an old friend whom I wished to visit. I might have taken some of Arthur's warriors instead, but I was touched that my cousin offered, and agreed at once. He had been something of a bully when we were little, and I thought he wished to make amends. But no sooner had we ridden from our holding than he began to speak pointedly of the power I must have as wife of the emperor, and I grew uneasy. I had heard that tale from too many petitioners, as preface to too many pleas for justice, money, or revenge, not to recognise it immediately. And sure enough, on the way back, Menu reined in his horse on a hill and looked out over the land in a calculating fashion.
Pretty,
he observed. I nodded. The dusk lay purple across the hills, and the soft summer stars were coming out eastward over the holding. To the north, the Roman wall leapt into the sunset behind us, scaling the boundaries of the old empire.
That land there,
Menu went on, pointing southeast,
is the only part not ours.
His tone gave particular significance to the words, not ours, and when I looked at him sharply, I saw that he had a sly, insinuating smile. Menu was a big man, with thick dark hair and heavy eyebrows, and the smile suited him very badly. "Is there something you would say?" I asked, hoping that my coldness would discourage him, but he seemed pleased, and frankly proposed a scheme for obtaining his neighbour's lands by official fraud and deceit.
"No one would be surprised,"
he told me.
"Through you we are not only noble and Roman descended, but the Emperor's kin as well. The sons of Hel are scarcely more than peasants, and rebellious ones at that. You know they fought in Bran's rebellion, and they are dishonest and give short measure when they trade and are of no use to anyone. We have more right to the land than such as they."
"But what have they done that is criminal enough to deprive them of their father's lands?" He looked startled.
"What do you mean, what have they done? It is what they are, and what we are, that matters."
"The laws are clear, Menu. I cannot help you." He began to glower.
"You mean you do not wish to help us?"
I shook my head, but it was no use trying to pretend I had misunderstood him and thought he wanted legal advice. He knew I understood, and began angrily to claim that I was indifferent to my family's welfare. It was no use to tell him of the ties of justice and the laws. He did not wish to understand anything more than the tie that binds each to his own clan. Eventually, I simply turned my mare and rode on toward the holding, but he refused to leave the subject and rode after me, shouting that we needed the land. It was then that I told him that he spoke like a beggar. At that, he forced his horse against mine and seized my arm, his face dark with anger, and I had to stop my mare for fear of being pulled from her back.
"You selfish vixen. What do you want with all those riches and honours? Great lady you may be, but you have no children to pass them on to. If I were your husband, I'd divorce you and marry any slut that could give me an heir. I'd divorce you at once, do you hear? If he divorces you, you'll need your kin. Better think who you call a beggar, noble lady."
I struck him across the face, jerked my arm free, then, not trusting myself or him to say anything more, spurred my horse to a gallop. He galloped after me, shouting, but my horse was faster than his, and he arrived at the holding several minutes after I pulled my mare to a halt in the yard. I waited for him to dismount, then dismounted myself. I tossed him the mare's reins as though he were a groom, said, "Never mention this subject to me again," and left him holding the sweating horse, glaring at me, his eyes bright with a powerless hatred. And now my father was dead, and Menu was chieftain of our clan. Father, I thought, still trying to understand it. I had only heard of his death the week before, and I still did not really believe in it. It is hard to believe that someone is dead when they have lived far away. They form no part of the pattern of one's life, and are not missed in the common things. It seemed as though, if I could only go home, he would be waiting there, as young and strong as in my earliest memories, and not even bent and feeble as he had been on that disastrous last visit. Only my father was not, never again would, be waiting for me at home. And now, after this, I could not go home at all. I took my hands from my eyes and stared at the letter. Home. That was a strange name to give that remote holding in the north, which I had left 12 years before to come to this fortress of Camelin. I tried to remember it. The house had been built by my great-grandfather's grandfather, who had received his lands from the Emperor Theodosius,